It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
My name is Jilchristina Vest, and we are in West Oakland, inside the West Oakland Mural Project, which is the home of the Women of the Black Panther Party Mural and the mini museum inside the mural.
Mm-hmm. And you also live here?
I live here. I live on the second floor. Museum is on the first floor. And I've been here in this house for 22 years, going on 22 and a half years.
Why did you think it was so important to make to make your house a museum and mural to the women of the Black Panther Party?
During the rebellions of 2020, there was such a deep, dark, depressing time. And I, like many people living in Black bodies, was suffering from a lot of grief and a lot of rage. And I needed something to balance that. Normally, in my early years, in 20s and 30s, I would be somebody that would have taken to the streets and yelled and screamed and done all of that. But I was already doing that inside the house, and I didn't want to participate in the rebellions in a way that was going to increase my rage. I needed to participate, yes. I wanted to show up, yes. But I needed to show up in a way that was going to be healing for me, and I needed to show up in a way that would heal my community. And that translated into doing something that celebrated Black joy and something that celebrated Black excellence. It's so easy for Black people to be reminded of our oppression. It's everywhere. They played the George Floyd lynching ad nauseum over and over and over again. Didn't matter what platform you were on, whether it was television or internet, it was played over and over again. And I think that is a tool of oppression that we either accept or deny. And I chose to deny it and say, instead of reminding myself of my oppression, let me do something that reminds myself of my greatness. And if I'm reminded, then my community will be reminded as well. And the Black Panther Party has a beautiful and amazing and brilliant story and history. They were born right here in Oakland, but prior to this mural, there was nothing in Oakland that celebrated them, nothing that memorialized their greatness and what it was that they were doing. So similarly, I didn't want to focus on oppression. I wanted to focus on joy. So the mural then became an expression of what the Panthers were doing versus a place to come and find out what was done to the Panthers. So focusing on the women, as a Black woman, that was because I was looking for visibility for myself as a Black woman, trying to combat the constant and ongoing invisibility of Black women. That's perpetuated by everybody, not just white supremacy. It's perpetuated by Black men, the Black community, the country in general, history in general. And women made up 70% of the Black Panther Party. So this actually is just a mural for the Black Panther Party when you think about it, even though it is dedicated to the women. And it's dedicated to the women because they were invisible. And during the Panther reign, these women and the men have told me they knew they were predominantly women. They understood that the majority of the comrades were women, that it wasn't, oh, women over there, go do this, and men over here, go do that. They did everything together. But what I have said in response to that, why doesn't anybody else know that?
What you picked up on there between that generational exchange, and you had you were mentored by Erica Huggins in the development of this project. Can you tell me a bit about how that relationship got started and how it developed throughout the creation of the mural?
Right. So when I decided to focus on the women of the Panther Party, I decided that was going to be the subject of the mural. The first person I contacted was Erica Huggins. She is somebody that I've shared community with for many years. And as a Black Panther, she was somebody that I had to reach out to because this isn't my story. So I had to ask permission to tell it, highlight it, and in order for it to be told accurately and respectfully, it had to be told by the women who were there. So reaching out to Erica for her permission, for her blessing, for her guidance, and then her then reaching out to all of her comrades and getting their okay and coming back and saying, yes, it's a go. And then her walking side by side with me during the entire process to make sure that it never became about me. That was really important for me, was that I wanted to be the conduit, I wanted to be the curator, but I did not want to be at center. I wanted these women's names, these women's voices, these women's stories, and these women's histories to be at the forefront. And Erica was able to make sure that that happened from day one. We created the imagery together. There was, I was like, what are some non-negotiables for you? What do you need to see on the mural in order for you to feel seen as a Black Panther? Because again, the entire purpose of this was creating visibility for Black women and to take up space without permission, to take up space unapologetically. And she was the one who wanted to make sure that the names were on the mural. She wanted to make sure that motherhood was represented on the mural. We both agreed that we wanted the women to be joyful. We see plenty of imagery of angry Black women, and that's a part of the oppression of Black women. Not that we don't have the right to be angry, we do. And not that we aren't angry, we are. But again, I don't need to be reminded of my anger because I can't stay there and thrive. I need to be reminded of my joy so that I can process my anger. So all of the women on the mural are smiling or in some way at ease. We wanted to make sure that the women were engaging, making eye contact with the viewer. That was very important to me. To give that dimension that these are real women. This isn't just a one-dimensional transactional mural. And throughout the process, she connected me with many other Panther women who, called me, and I had amazing conversations and learned so much and was very humbled by the process. One of the biggest things that Erica brought to it was her understanding of something bigger. And, Lisbeth Tellefson, we didn't speak about her. So it's kind of a trio that created this project where, I got Erica to help me with the mural. And then when the museum idea was born, and it wasn't my idea, and that's a different story, is when I called Lisbeth Tellefson, who's Erica's partner. And everything here in the museum that you see is hers. She produced all of this. She framed these photographs and laminated these posters and created these banners. And when the museum idea kind of solidified, I called her and asked her for her help. And she's like, absolutely. I have everything that you need to create a museum. And so the three of us have been, the minds and the mavens behind this. Yeah, all three of us. So this project, it's on my house, yes. It was my idea, yes. It was a vision that I had, yes. But it became very clear soon into the process that this was driven by something way bigger than I am, way bigger than Erica is. And Erica had a better sense of what that was. And the best way to describe it is I'm a Sagittarius. I do production for a living. I'm very, list-oriented, deadlines. We've got to do this, A, B, and C, boom, 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 boom. And I was trying to do that with the mural. I was trying to control all the aspects and put deadlines on the aspects. And anytime anything I tried to control would just come to a dead stop. And I would get really upset. And I thought, oh my goodness, all these elders know about this project now and I'm going to fail. And now all these people are involved and we're missing the deadline. We don't have enough money and we don't have this and we don't have that. And, you know, I would call Erica and just be in tears, just basically out of fear of failure, the fear of failure. And she was able to explain to me or teach me or guide me into moving away from trying to control the details, to stay focused on what my mission was and that the details would take care of themselves. And it took me a couple of times to understand what that meant because I am so detail-oriented, so it was really oxymoronic for me to process that. Just didn't make sense. But once I finally got it and just released it, the ancestors took care of the details. And all I did was continue to kind of drive the mission, and the details were completely taken care of, not by me. And that was a really amazing process to walk through with her. And one of the key examples of how I could not have possibly have done this without her, nor should I have, but her as a particular individual and the women that she connected me to because of it, I couldn't have done it. It wouldn't have been successful. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful collaboration. Still is. She's, you know, still very much a part of the project.
Thank you. Could you tell me a bit about the importance and the process of collecting all of the names of the women in the party that you've collected? Yeah.
The whole project started out of the invisibility of Breonna Taylor. She was murdered 2.5 months before George Floyd. Nobody took to the streets for her outside Louisville, Kentucky. She eventually became a name of the rebellions of 2020, but as a Black woman, experiencing that delay over and over again is really devastating. The murder of Sandra Bland gave birth to the Say Her Name movement when she was murdered in 2015. And there was such an outrage of yet again a Black woman was killed, and nobody responded on a national level until Black women came to the streets, literally screaming at the top of their lungs, say her name. Somebody will say this woman's name. I'll start crying. There's a thing in psychology studies that says the most pleasing thing to a human brain is the sound of their own name. When you hear your name, it's an acknowledgement that you exist, that somebody can see you. And that's why they're saying your name, because they know you exist. So when your name is not spoken, your name is not remembered, it's as if your existence was not important. And that's the whole impetus of the Say Her Name movement, and that was the beginning of this process. For me, Sandra Bland, Say Her Name, invisibility of Black women, all of that. So it was perfect and made so much sense that, of course, we're going to try to include these women's names, these names that nobody knows and nobody speaks. When the project first started, it was called the Say Her Name Women of the Black Panther Party Mural, and it still is to a certain extent. For me, it's still called that, but there was the Say Her Name has kind of fallen off as far as all of the literature and whatnot, because people were saying, oh, the Say Her Name movement is about Black women being killed, and the women of the Black Panther Party is a completely separate conversation. And it is. And I understood that feedback, and that feedback made sense to me. But the back of the house is still dedicated to Sandra Bland, and including the women's names on the side And, the database had been started by Erica Huggins and a researcher named Angela LeBlanc Ernest. And the two of them had been working together for quite some time. And then from there, the mural then started collecting even more names and even more names. And, one Panther woman would send me 10 names and another brother would send me 15. That type of thing is how it came together and got all put into a database. And it's the importance of these women, somebody, whether sometimes it's their daughter that walks up and sees their mother's name on the wall. It's a niece that says, that's my auntie. Again, it's the reinforcement that these women who've been invisible for all this time, they existed, their stories matter, their names matter, and to be able to walk up to the house and read a name out loud, recognize a name, speaks them into existence. And that's what this whole process was meant to be about, is putting them at the forefront of the conversation and saying to some degree, we remember you, we see you, we thank you, we honor you. What you did was important, and what you did is affecting us in a positive way. And I'm glad to know your name.
When you purchased the house, did you know that it was across the street from where Dr. Huipi Newton was murdered? I
didn't know that. I learned that about a year after I moved in. So I bought the house in 2000. It was unlivable. It was falling down. And it took 2.5 years of renovations. And it took 2.5 years because I don't have a lot of money. So it was a lot of me and my friends over here tearing down walls and pulling out toilets. And, I would get some money and we'd come and do some work. And after 2.5 years, I moved in June of 2002. And it was within that year is when I found out that Huey was assassinated across the street, because they used to do Black Panther tours throughout the city. They don't do them anymore, to my knowledge. So it would be, I don't know, maybe once a week or once a month, I don't remember the frequency, where a whole big tour bus of people would come and they'd pour out onto the street across from my house. And I never knew what they were talking about. And I think at some point, maybe the second time or the third time, I leaned out the window and listened. And then I was like, oh my God, I bought the house across the street from where Huey was murdered. And the bell going off on that day was tremendous, because I bought the house in this particular neighborhood, in this West Oakland community, because of the Black Panther Party. And me learning the history of West Oakland and learning the legacy of the Panthers in West Oakland, and how they were born in North Oakland on MLK, used to be Grove Street, but this was their hub. First breakfast program was here. The headquarters was around the corner. And when I learned all of those details in the mid-90s, that's when I decided to buy a house in this community because of that legacy. So imagine when I found out that, I not only bought a house in the heart of Black Panther country, but I bought the house across the street from where the founder of the Black Panther Party was killed. So that was pretty intense and pretty amazing. And, also over the years that I've lived here, there's been people that come by, but again, there's never been monuments in the city of Oakland that honor the fact that Oakland gave birth to the Black Panther Party, something that Oakland should be very proud of and should be screaming from the rooftops as far as I'm concerned. When you look at the actual history of the Black Panther Party and what it was that they were doing, what their ideals were, what their mission was, what their ethos was, they are a group of young people that should be celebrated and studied. They're the largest group of humanitarians that ever gathered at one given moment in world history, from what I can tell. And so when the mural started, word was getting out that this was happening, and word got out to Huey Newton's widow, and she came by one day And that's when the conversation started of just like, this is the ideal time for something to finally go up for Huey Newton, you know, where he was killed, or, you know, West Oakland, where he changed the world. And, you know, this is the prime opportunity. So that was great that the mural sparked that conversation. A lot of people in this community were here when he was murdered and knew him at the end of his life. And their initial response was, why do we want to remember that? That was a really horrible time, and it was really dark, and why do we want that to be a memory? And I got into a lot of great conversations with elders who had a little bit of pushback at first, but my thing is that, yeah, he died here. Yes, he died on our block across the street from us, but he also changed the world from here on our block across the street from us. So that's what we're honoring. We're not honoring that this is where he was murdered. We're not honoring what was happening to the last couple of years of his life. We're honoring that this is the person that spearheaded this huge, amazing movement, and his legacy has been forgotten, and we can honor it. So I got the signatures and all the buy-in, and handed those into the city, and Huey's widow from there took it and got the street name changed, and then the statue was put in. And, you know, in the very, very beginning, I think one of the very first interviews that I did, I was saying I'm trying to create a Black Panther trifecta. And it happened, even though it's a quad now, because there's the mural, the museum, the name change, and the statue. But it's now become, you know, one of the most visited places for people coming from out of town, because it's the only place in the city where you can learn about the Panthers. And it's something that people have asked for a really long time. And it's very specific. You're going to learn about the Panthers' work. You're not going to learn about the destruction of the Panther Party. You're not going to learn about J. Edgar Hoover and COINTELPRO and the assassination of Fred Hampton and political prisoners. Again, I don't need to be reminded of my oppression. I need to be reminded of my greatness. And that's what the museum is about. That's what it's focused on. So you learn about the free ambulance program and sickle cell anemia research and taking care of elders and, you know, legal aid and free eyeglasses for kids, that type of thing.
Okay. What do you think has been the impact of the mural on the local community?
I think it's been brilliant. It was a conversation that I had with my immediate neighbors right here on my block before the process began, and kind of going door to door. I mean, I'd been here at the time, I'd been here for 20 years. I know everybody on my block. Everybody has each other's phone numbers. We know each other's cars. We know each other's schedules, that type of thing. It's a very, typical Black community that I feel is typical to the Black communities that I grew up in Chicago. You say good morning, you refer to people as miss or auntie, that type of thing. It's really a beautiful part. And it's not the image that people have of West Oakland. It's not the stories that are told outside of West Oakland. You know, people think that there's just gunslingers and, drug slingers here. And I'm sure there are. But those people are also in San Francisco, and they're also in Pleasanton, and they're also in Berkeley, and there's nothing different happening here. It's just the way the story is spun. And one of the things that I talked about with my neighbors before and during the process of creating it is I want people to come to West Oakland for a beautiful reason. I want people to talk about West Oakland in a beautiful way, and the way that we experiencing it and the way that we live it. And that is what happened. So there is, it used to be, oh, wow, you live in West Oakland? Aren't you afraid of getting shot? Eye roll. And now it's like, oh, you live in West Oakland? Do you know where the Mural House is? Have you been? So it's a complete shift in tone, a complete shift in demeanor. And it's, brought a lot of joy, and the fundraising and the food giveaways, the immediate community benefits from that every time. So it's a project for West Oakland. Everybody is experiencing it and everybody is coming to see it, but I would like to the best of my ability, continue to focus on West Oakland benefiting from it. When it comes to free food and free groceries and throwing block parties, it's advertised and it's put here and there, but not to a very big extent. It's flyered to this 4-block radius. And the idea of you can walk to this block party because it's your community block party. So.
One thing particularly that's part of the mural project that intersects with this project is you have Assata's chant on the wall. I think it's on the back wall, things like that. So I wanted to ask you, what does that chant mean to you? Or when did you first hear Assata's chant, and what does it mean to you?
I've never heard it referred to as Assata's chant. Okay. So chant in my accent, which I love it though. And it's interesting that you refer to it that way, because last weekend the National Education Association's Black Caucus was in town for their annual conference here in Oakland, and 100 Black teachers came here to the mural in the museum on Saturday. It was absolutely brilliant and amazing, and an absolute expression of the ancestors in full fire. And I do a tour where we talk about everything that's on the side of the house. So, for those people who are listening, the side of the house faces 9th Street and is the bulk of the real estate. And that is the gigantic mural dedicated to the women of the Panther Party. At the end of that, if you turn into the backyard, is where there's a quote from Sandra Bland that's huge and gigantic, massive words. A quote, she's only famous because she's somebody who was lynched by the police. But there's so many other things that she should be famous for. There's so many other things people should know about her. She shouldn't just be known for how she died. She should be known for how she lived. And that's why the back of the house is dedicated to her. And then to the left of her gigantic quote is where Assata's quote is, a little bit lower, closer to the viewer. And when the Black teachers were here and we were in the back looking at Sandra's quote, one of the chairmen said, "Oh, well, I don't think you realize that we say this quote at the beginning of every single one of our meetings." And I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah, and I think we should say it now together." And there's probably about 130 of us, blocked the street, and apparently they hold hands, so we all held hands together. And while, Sandra Bland's words are looking down on us, Assata's words are looking down on us, and we all held hands, and the chairman woman led us in the chant. And she spoke it, and then we spoke it as a group, and she'd speak the next line. And it was so incredible. I'm getting goosebumps remembering it. It was so beautiful. There's a video of it somewhere. So what it means to me is it's like the purest expression of what's real. There's nothing missing from that chant. Everything that we need to know to get free is in that chant. It's the simplest thing, yet the most complex. And I think that, that's why it resonates with people so much, is the simplicity of it. But it's so deep at the same time. And for me, I can't remember the first time I heard it. I don't know first time I read it. I'm imagining it had to be sometimes in the 80s or the 90s. When I was in college, when I read her autobiography, I don't remember. I know that I have a protest sign that I made that has the chant on there. And no matter what protest I've ever been to in the past 30 years, I have it in it's tattered and worn and has been rained on, but I use like paint markers so it can't drip or anything. I've taken that one placard poster on a broomstick to I don't know how many protests or gatherings. To me, it speaks to me in that it's my responsibility. And I hope that it speaks to everybody in that way. It's all about holding yourself accountable for how it is that you're participating in your oppression, how you're participating in your liberation, and how that resonates and has a butterfly effect to your entire community. And there's a symbol, an Ndinkra, on the main mural with the women that basically means that the interconnectedness of community, and that if the decisions I'm making are helping free me from my chains, I am automatically helping my community find liberation.